Okay, so today we're going to shift our focus slightly and start looking at, let me just do the screen again, see if we can make it a little bit better. It's probably about the best, right? That third one. Nice. Okay, so we're going to shift our focus slightly and start thinking about jobs, because that's why most of you are here, to break into a new market or just upskill and get a new job. So next week, Ricardo will do his talk on how to nail a job interview, or just all those sort of preparation steps, how to even get a job interview in the first place, right? If you're curious to get ahead, then we've also got 3 videos on our YouTube channel, so they all repeat similar content. The most extensive one is the one when we did a meetup edition, so there's some really good little nuggets in there. It's about an hour long, but I think the end of it is lots of Q&A, so you might be interested in that as well. But yeah, some really good tips in there, so I'd recommend having a look at that one. And I will share some example CVs with you after this workshop if you're thinking about redesigning your CV perhaps, because tech CVs can sometimes be slightly different to a few other industries. Yeah, so some industries like just the plain old sort of black and white and very clinical almost. So, but in tech we want to make ourselves stand out a little bit more, show that we can do decent layouts and use some icons, a bit of color in there. So anyway, I'll share some of those with you afterwards, but I would recommend having a look at one of these videos, and Ricardo will do a talk next week as well, specifically on this sort of stuff. Yeah, and feel free to send over your CVs or cover letters, anything like that, anytime to us, and we will review them, either for grammar if English isn't your first language, or also just for general sort of layout and what to include where, all those sorts of things, yeah? So feel free to send those over if you have one. If not, maybe start thinking about creating one and we can help you with that. Cool, so yeah, the first thing then, let's say that you're out there, you're putting yourself out there, you've changed your LinkedIn profile to reflect your current tech stack, right? So you've got yourself down as a junior developer perhaps, and you've listed that your skills are React and JavaScript, and that is usually enough to get some recruitment companies contacting you. And then the first stage might be, please obviously reply to them, because you might think that it's not the most effective way to get a job is the recruitment companies, but still, certainly some of our past students have, and at least you will get practice at these first couple of stages that we're going to talk about today. So the first stage usually being you're going to get some sort of telephone call or online simple tech test, yeah? So the telephone call, really they just want to assess your general understanding of the language already. So we'll look at some questions now, but we've tried to cover them as we've been going throughout the course, yeah? So one of the really common ones is, what is the difference between var, let, and const in JavaScript, yeah? So we did a whole workshop on that. So can anyone refresh my memory of a few of the differences? Const is constant, so be careful with saying that, because we can still change a variable that's been assigned with const, right?
You can't reassign it.
We can't reassign it, exactly, Anais, yeah? So that's the key difference between const and let, is that const does not let us reassign a variable afterwards. So we can't put const my variable equals 7 and then my variable equals 9. We can't change the value of it using the equals operator, yeah, the assignment operator. What are some other differences? The scope, fantastic, yeah. If you can talk about scope at that first stage and explain it quite clearly, then they should be very impressed, yeah. So what are the differences with the scope between var, let, and const?
Let has a global scope.
var has the global scope, yeah, not let. So var has the global scope. That was the older method, yeah, and then the newer methods introduced in ES6, so in 2015, were let and const. So they don't have global scope, they have block scope, yeah, so they are declared within a block and they only exist within that block, yeah. Okay, cool, yeah, so they would be some of the main differences. Good. Yeah, other questions we might have. What is an anonymous function? You've used these a lot. So what is an anonymous function? A function we haven't given a name to, right? It's as simple as that. It's anonymous. It has no name. And they might then ask a follow-up question, and where would you use those types of functions, or where have you used them? You've used them a lot already in your projects.
As a callback, say to
Yeah.
a method like reduce.
Absolutely, very, very common in callbacks. Well, as a callback, yeah, you use an arrow function, anonymous arrow function often as a callback in modern JavaScript. And yeah, Richard went one step further and gave a specific method or example of that. So a lot of our array methods like map, reduce, filter, they all take this callback function, yeah? We're not giving a name to that callback function, it's just used inside of our map or our reduce, and then it's done with, yeah? After our reduce function is finished, so there's no need to name it. Cool, yeah, so they're very common questions. We had one which was a little bit weird, I must admit, on a telephone interview for one guy, but he essentially got asked, what is a weak map in JavaScript? So we haven't covered this yet, but all they're trying to do with all of these questions is just determine your general understanding of the language. You know, have you studied the language a little bit? So a weak map, does anyone actually know what it is? So I think the guy wasn't sure at that stage when he had the interview, so he started talking about array.map, yeah, the array method. So that's not what they were looking for in this case. So a map or a weak map is actually a newer data type in JavaScript, so similar to an array. It's like it's almost a cross between an array and an object. So you've got almost alias names for the values. Yeah, so you've got like a reference name and a value as two paired things. And a weak map, being weak means it can be garbage collected in JavaScript rather than a map itself wouldn't be garbage collected. So yeah, these are just general sort of questions they might throw out there. That was a more tricky one, and they wouldn't have expected anyone to get that, but if you could, obviously that would differentiate you straight away. Another thing to note, the people who often do these first telephone interviews are not necessarily themselves highly technical. They're probably reading these questions off a sheet that they've been given by someone else, and they're just almost looking for keywords. Yeah, so if you can talk about scope, you know, they spoke about scope, yeah, good on the varlet and const, fantastic, yeah, they must know what they're talking about, yeah, so it's really only that sort of surface level understanding. If you can go deeper, fantastic, but yeah, often it can be just that sort of interview at that very first stage. Of course, later on you're going to need to back up your claims, but at that first stage it is usually just a case of mentioning certain things. So if you said weak map is a data type, you know, in JavaScript, and talked about garbage collection, then I'm sure that would almost get you onto the next stage. And of course, they're assessing all your soft skills at this stage as well. Can you clearly communicate your ideas? Are you quite fluent, you know, in your speech, or are you halting and not able to explain things very well? So all of those things are being assessed at that first stage, right? And usually it's done by a telephone interview. Yeah, we'll just do a few more general sort of interview questions. So sometimes they used to ask this a lot, I think not so much anymore, but has anyone ever heard of an IFE? I-I-F-E, all capital letters. So it's an acronym in JavaScript. So it stands for Immediately Invoked Function Expression. So I will give you an example of one of those in DevTools. And this will most likely be as part of a later board challenge. So we're used to doing this, right? Function, my function, and we make it return something. So I am a function declaration. Yeah, so obviously like correct terminology is going to be really important on these telephone interviews as well. So just brush up on your terminology. And then how do we actually invoke that function now? If I've my func, yeah, get your func on, Abdul. So we can go myfunc and then curly braces like that, right? And that invokes the function. So it's a two-step process. Yeah, it's not immediately invoked. We've declared it, stored it in memory for later, and then we've invoked it. With an immediately invoked function expression, or immediately invoked function, whatever, then we get rid of the named invocation, and what we can do is we can wrap the whole function in parentheses to make it just one thing, right? And then put the curly braces afterwards to invoke it. And that invokes it straight away. So when line 1 is met, the whole thing will get run and invoked straight away. Yeah, and return the result. Whereas what we've been doing, yeah, of course we could also remove the name because we're just immediately invoking it, so there's no reason to have a name. I was just doing a direct comparison there, absolutely. Yep, so we've been doing that, yeah. So without that invocation, we don't return anything, right? Undefined, there's nothing returned. Yeah, so we must either invoke it, which we've been doing throughout the whole course, and that gets our correct return statement, or we turn it into an immediately invoked function expression. And the most common way of doing that, there are other ways, but the most common way of doing that is wrapping the whole function in parentheses and then using another set of parentheses to invoke it. Richard made a really good point. Because we're immediately invoking it, why do we need to name it? So we can again make it an anonymous function. It has no name. Yeah, and just do something like that. And that also works. And of course, if we did want to store this result for later, we can still assign that to a variable, right? So const IIFE, yeah, immediately invoked function expression, and do something like that. Yep, so then I would do something like console.log IIFE. Oops, yeah, that's because I haven't wrapped it in my curly braces, right? We're in DevTools. And there we go, right? Yeah, so stage 1, assessing your general understanding of the language and why we use certain things. So another common one, if you're applying for a React developer role, just why React? Why would you use React? Yeah, so we mentioned this briefly, I think, in the intro to React session, but from working with it for a little while now, are you clear why we would use React in an application? Throw some ideas out at me. Why do you think we would use React? It loads straight on your web browser. But isn't that just JavaScript in by itself can just work in the browser without any external dependencies? Why use React to develop? Yeah. Yeah, so definitely. So the modular or component architecture, yeah, is incredibly popular now. So if you could talk about, yeah, component-based libraries or frameworks, which a lot of the modern and most popular frameworks and libraries are, breaking your code up into not ever smaller, but just small manageable components. Yeah. So why is component-based architecture an advantage?
Because then you can sort of like functionalize your functionality.
Functionalize your functionality. I don't quite know what that means, Abdul. Can you explain? It sounds nice, but I don't quite know what it means.
So what it means? It means the future of your application. You break it down into functions.
Yep.
And then you can you can encapsulate those features.
Okay, encapsulate. I like that word better. Yeah.
And then you use it to obviously then you display it as tags, or you display it as components.
Yeah. So essentially, we're breaking our code base up into small, manageable parts, right? And why does this help? it helps for reusing the code later. Yeah, you're future-proofing it in a way.
If you want to change something.
If you want to change something, yeah, it's a lot easier to change just one smaller component than it is to find the error in thousands of lines of code and debug that, absolutely. So it helps with debugging, it helps with code maintenance. It can help with scalability as well. You can reuse the same bit of code across different projects. Yeah, I don't think anyone here was there, but they were talking about that a lot at one of the recent meetups we went to with the Talent.io meetup, and the lady from The Guardian there was talking about how they're now reusing you know, essentially the same component across different apps that they've got. Yeah, so really interesting way to approach designing apps. And yeah, if you built something once, why do you want to write it from scratch again? If it's working, if it's good code, just update it slightly perhaps and reuse it again. Yeah, so time is money, all that. So yeah, good. And yeah, other sort of general React questions, they might ask you just what is Redux and why might you use it. Redux, we haven't talked about that yet either, but yeah, so they might ask in general about what is state and why do we use it in an application. And of course, again, that's just we store anything in the state that we expect to change within our application. So it's a separate logical layer, if you like. We can break things up into stuff that we expect to change and stuff that we don't expect to change. Redux itself is a global state store. So state in React, is it available everywhere? If I define state in my gallery component, is that available in my details component? No, right? So state is local to the file that you declare it in, unless, you know, we pass it in some other way, but by default, yeah, it's...
I've got a question. So you keep mentioning state in terms of Redux. Would that then also include hooks?
Would that also call hooks? No.
Stateless states. As Ricardo likes to put it.
Right. I mean, there's nothing stopping you from using React hooks and Redux together in an application. That's absolutely fine. But Redux itself has a quite different syntax to what you're used to just playing around with normal React. So yeah, essentially, we would advise that it's not necessarily necessary unless you have absolutely huge projects and it's just become a nightmare to pass state between your components because there's just so many. Then what Redux can do is can make that local state available across the whole application by just keeping a global state store. Yeah, so you could just, if you like, it's not like this, but you could reference it by this.redux.state, yeah, and then you could do that from any component, and you could access just that state that belonged to a totally different component. Otherwise, you'd have to pass it up and down the state tree or use the context API or something like that. Yeah, but yeah, so they're not looking for anything too in depth, but just what is it? So it's a global state store and might be very, very useful for large applications. And the same sort of thing for TypeScript, right? They might ask you, what is TypeScript and why would you use it? So does anyone know what TypeScript is? It's becoming increasingly popular, especially with people who have come from strongly typed languages like Java.
Just know that's another type of JavaScript.
You know it's another type of JavaScript, yeah. So essentially, yeah, it's a superset of JavaScript. So you could write absolutely any JavaScript within a TypeScript file. That's accepted, yeah. But TypeScript goes one step further, if you like. Yeah, it's a superset of JavaScript. So what does it bring to the language? Yeah.
Introduce more specific typing or something?
Yeah, it introduced...
Allows us to specify our data.
Yeah, we have to specify our data type. So JavaScript itself is a dynamically typed language, right? Okay, let's use let. I can do let variable equals 78, a number, yeah? And then I can change it down here to variable equals a string, yeah? And then on the next line I could do variable equals an object. Yeah, so I could just keep changing this same variable into all these different data types, from a number to a string to an object. So it's a dynamically typed language, JavaScript, yeah? Other languages aren't necessarily like that. So depending on who you talk to, that's either an advantage or a disadvantage of the language, you know, it's an opinionated thing. I quite like it. I like that we can transform our data very, very easily, but I agree also that in certain applications it can become hard to keep track of what type of data we've got at a certain point within the code, yeah? So something like TypeScript would say that if you've declared that variable as a number, you would have had to explicitly say this variable is going to be a number, and then you would not be able to change it to any other data type, yeah? It would throw some sort of error and prevent you from doing things like that.
When was this actually invented by Microsoft, TypeScript?
Very good question. Yeah, I mean that's another fact that you could look up to impress your employers. When was TypeScript first? So as Abdul said, it was invented by Microsoft or developed by Microsoft in October 2012, 6 years ago. Yeah, but its popularity is growing year on year, and certainly quite a few of the developers who have got quite a few of our students who have got JavaScript developer jobs have also had to then go on to learn a bit of TypeScript in their job. Yeah, but once you've got the key core language of JavaScript down, then that shouldn't be too difficult.
I think
CoffeeScript was prior to that. I think that was before. Yeah, so CoffeeScript was more just a way to write JavaScript a bit quicker, right? To reduce the syntax of JavaScript. So when that came out, I imagine it would be before that. 2009, right? So that was 9 years ago. So that came out earlier. So again, they're just languages that transpile or transcompile to JavaScript. Yeah.
Are they all trying to steal into the JavaScript market?
Yeah, of course. They're trying to build upon the popularity of JavaScript, but they're also trying to make JavaScript programmers' lives easier.
Oh, okay.
Yeah? So if there were some particularly confusing bits of the language, then maybe in CoffeeScript you could just write that in an easier manner. Similar to, you know, if you've had experience with jQuery in the past, it made DOM selection a lot easier, right?
Okay.
jQuery transpiled to JavaScript at the end of the day. It's no different, but it was just an easier to write syntax. Yeah, so all of these tools should just make a developer's life easier. And as soon as they start failing to do that, or the core language itself gets updated, you know, such as we had with jQuery itself, or people would write libraries previously for promises, for asynchronous JavaScript. That's another good question, right? What's asynchronous JavaScript, or what do we mean by asynchronous code? Asynchronous code, again, we haven't covered it yet, but we will certainly in the later parts of the course. So, go on, Richard, if you want. Yeah.
Is that kind of run parallel?
Yeah, so rather than just running one thing after another, an asynchronous function or an asynchronous bit of code would get queued for later on. Yeah, so it would actually go onto a different call stack, and then you'd finish your current program or function that you're inside, and then as long as that call stack was clear, it would then go and run the asynchronous code. Yeah, or just running different tasks in parallel is a fairly nice way of putting it, Abdul. Yeah. So certainly the later part of the course we'll cover asynchronous JavaScript a lot. We'll look a bit deeper into promises. You're already starting to use those, right, with the fetch API. A lot of modern APIs are promise-based APIs. But again, promises never used to be in the language of JavaScript. Someone else wrote the code, and developers said, this is a good way of doing this. We're going to include that in the core JavaScript language. So this is just how the language evolves over time. Yeah? Nice. Any other, I guess, general questions that you've heard that always seem to be asked that you're not clear on? No, I don't. Not yet, Abdul. Keep going.
No, what I'm just trying to say is like, how can you go about, if you're a developer, because I've met a lot of, or interacted with a lot of developers who are not quite good or excellent in their explanation.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and
they're very good in terms of if they have to implement.
yep, yep.
You know, but I mean, they are very good at illustrating. So with a pen and paper, they can illustrate
Mm-hmm.
like what they're doing, you know, and at the same time, when they have to implement, they're very good and efficient at implementing.
Yep.
But when it comes to interaction or explaining,
Yeah.
how do one go about this kind of
Yeah, it's a big challenge, right? Because again, we've had past students that are incredibly skilled technically, but maybe communication-wise or just selling themselves on a phone, they really struggle with. And in the past, I think some developers could get away with that a bit more. That stereotype of the the geeky programmer who's maybe not the best socially, but is just amazing technically, was almost accepted. Now companies want people who can definitely work in teams and communicate their ideas and all that sort of stuff as well. So yeah, if we do get a particular student that struggles with things like that, then we have now got a few contacts sort of via recruitment agencies and things like that, where we can have people work with them on their soft skills, right? So how do you communicate your ideas? How do you phrase your questions on the telephone? Stuff like that. So phrase your questions or phrase your answers on the telephone. Obviously, we're doing the board challenges here, which are hopefully helping you a little bit with that. How to talk through code, how to explain it to another person. Obviously, again, working in your team apps and any pair work we do should help you develop these skills. But yeah, of course, Ricardo, I guess we'll talk about that next week as well, the softer side of things. Today, I just wanted to really focus on some of the technical questions and show you a few technical platforms. But yeah, it's a big consideration as to how exactly you nail that. It's like everything, I guess, just practice, yeah, and building your confidence. Following some patterns. So, yeah. If anyone's got any other suggestions, feel free to drop it in there. It's not just me giving advice. If anyone's got good advice, please share it. So anyway, hopefully on that first telephone interview, or maybe even, they will just throw you straight into some sort of online test. If you've said you're a JavaScript developer, let's just give them an online test and see whether they can actually write some JavaScript code. Yeah? So, yeah, hopefully you've passed that telephone interview by being able to answer some of those questions that we've gone through there. YouTube's full of these sort of things, yeah? I mean, you can just type top 10 JavaScript interview questions. This guy's quite good. Text this guy. And, yeah, he goes through just some answers to some common ones. So the var, let, and const comes up in there. I think he eventually goes through closures as well at the end. That's another common one. What's a closure? So again, you've probably used them quite a bit without knowing so far. What's that one there? Oh, okay, so that's exactly that one. That's a good one as well, right? So we've covered that, the difference between double equals and triple equals. Yeah, so remind me.
I think it was single equals.
Go on then, Lofa, yeah?
One is assigning.
One is assigning. No, that's just one equal, isn't it? The assignment operator.
3 equals is exactly the same.
Whereas 2 equals can be any type, like string and number can also be true. So
It's so long as it's the same, like say 1 is a string, 1 is a number.
whereas the second one is not strictly.
Yeah, so a simplified answer would be that the triple equals is a stricter comparison. Yeah, they're both comparison operators, but the triple equals is comparing both the value and the type, must be the same, whereas the double equals is not concerned whether the type is the same, yeah? And as Ricardo said, please don't use double equals. There's almost no use case for it, yeah? I mean, if we did 6 double equals the string 6, is that going to be true or false? Exactly, right? That's going to be true. Whereas if we use triple equals, is that going to be the same?
No.
No. Yep, so that's comparing the type as well. And other common ones, I guess, are just saying something like that. Is it not going to let me do it? Unexpected token.
Why was that false before?
Why is what one false? Sorry, the.
Like it said 6 equals 6.
Yep.
Equals a string.
Yeah, because they're different data types, Ewan, yeah? So that is going to be. It's comparing. Firstly, is the value the same? But yeah, if we coerce them to the same data type, the value will be the same, right? If we coerce them both to a string, they will both be a string of 6. But are they the same data type? Absolutely not, right? We've got the number and the string, so therefore they are not equal using the triple equals, and that makes sense. That makes more sense, right, to a human. Oh, is the string 6 equal to the number 6? No, they're different things. Just wondering why it didn't like my object. Maybe it was treating them as blocks of code rather than objects. So that's a common one as well. Is an array equal to empty array equal to an empty array? No. Why?
They're technically different objects.
Yeah. We covered this a little bit as well by the pass by value, pass by reference thing. So these are different objects in memory. Yeah, they're complex data types. They're different objects. We've created one object here and created a totally separate object there. So yeah, there's other ways we can do that, but I won't go into it here. But essentially, yeah, they might just try and catch you out with something like that if you're doing comparison. The same for objects. Any complex data type you can't compare with the triple equals. Only our primitives, yeah, our numbers, our strings, those sorts of things. Alright, anyway, that's enough of the general questions. I just want to show you a couple of platforms. So this, one of our ex-students got this. They had to go onto HackerRank and just complete a little sample test. So you'll just get an email link from a recruitment company. Well, you can't see that very well, can you? From a recruitment company, or the company themselves directly might have paid for a subscription to one of these services. There's quite a few popping up now. So there's that HackerRank, there's Codility. So yeah, either as a programmer yourself or as a company, you can sign up for an account on there. If you want to be a developer, there's a few demo tests. So they're really useful things to have a look at. Yeah, so essentially you just need an email login. I'm going to get spammed now by my email being on YouTube. Probably not. All right, but all I wanted to show you is that it's very similar to the Codiri platform. So the instructions tend to be longer and a lot more in-depth. You know, given an unsorted array of n elements, find if the element k is present. So they tend to be maybe a little bit mathematical as well. Got some constraints as you would with functions. Sample input, so the same way as if you called a function and you pass those inputs into it, and the expected result, we wanted a yes. Yeah. Once you finally get through all of it, you can see that you're just given a code snippet again, right, like that. A lot of them, the platforms are multi-language. So some job interviews will let you use any language you want. Obviously, if you're going for a specific JavaScript developer role, it probably makes sense to use JavaScript, and most of you in here, that will be your preferred language anyway. So then, again, all you have to do is write the function. And the little test environment there will let you run the code, and you should get some feedback and then submit and continue, right? So you will actually get these things used quite a lot. Very similar online platforms to the Codiri platform. Hopefully in the future we'll have the Codiri platform being used by some companies, and then you can do the test in a really familiar environment. But you know, that's in the future. So for now, you're going to have similar things offered by other companies. What do we have to do again? Look, we could just do it quickly if you wished. Given the array 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we want to find the element 1 if it is present or not. We can find the element 1 at index equals 0, therefore we print yes. Okay, so just find if an element is in an array, yeah? And we must return yes or no. Can we do that then, guys, quickly? So we're given an array, and find if the element k is present, and return either yes in capitals, or no in capitals. How would we do that? Start with filter? Possibly, but yeah, we would just use find instead, yeah? Find makes it easier, we're only looking for one thing. So we could do what? Return array dot find. And then we want to find what? It's what, we just want to do k like that? That's not how we use find though, is it?
Element arrow function element equals k.
Yeah, so we're looping over the array, so we're passing our element argument, and does the element equal like that? Is it equal with a double equal sign? No. Something like that.
Yeah, and we want to see because find returns undefined is false, or that the value is true. So you want to turn that into a true or false. You can put a double negation at the front of it.
Can put a double what, sorry?
Double exclamation mark before all that. So you turn double exclamation mark.
You want to do that to turn it into true or false?
I think I can do it.
Yeah.
So this is, yeah.
Could we not just do that
Yeah.
as well? Ternary.
I think so.
And put true false.
But if it's truthy, it doesn't have to be explicitly true, does it? If it's a truthy value, it will return whatever we put after the ternary. Yeah, your other option will work because the not will coerce it into true or false, but the opposite of what it returned, right? So if it returned undefined, it would coerce it into true, and then that extra not operator will just put it back to be relevant, the relevant truthy or falsy value. Yeah, so that would work also. As a lot of people haven't seen that, I'll go with this way for now. So yeah, in other words, if we find an element, yeah, if all of this returns a truthy value, unless we've got zeros in there, and then we'd have to be careful, right? But I don't think we've got any zeros in there. So we want to return yes, right? If we find something. Otherwise, no. Yeah. So unless I didn't read the question properly, what's in here? It's just their test function. I think that's probably all we have to do. Let's have a look. Boom, yeah. So then they've often got more extensive tests than you're used to. Yeah, they're being really, really specific. They have 12 separate test cases. But we can see that our function that we wrote there passed all of those test cases. Let's just try. So you still want to use the ternary, right? Did you? Yeah. So essentially, it's redundant, right? But yeah, we can still run it and see whether that passes all the tests. Yeah. And just to be double clear that it's not always always passing, let's just amend it in some way. And we can see that no test case is passed, yeah? Because it was the wrong way around. Fantastic, yeah. I mean, so that's just getting you used to the platform. Often the test you get will be a little bit more involved than that, depending on how mean the company's going to be and what sort of position you're applied for. But can you see that the format is quite similar to what you're used to, yeah? So the training on the platform should be preparing you very well for these types of initial tests. So this is usually even before you go to the company. They will just send you this. As you can see, it's timed. You'll get 30 minutes or an hour to log in using the login that they've given you, complete the online test, and usually then there will be a follow-up phone call, and you will have to talk through how it went. So you might not manage to solve it, but even if you don't manage to solve it, if you can talk through your approach and talk through the steps that you were going through to try and solve it, then that may be enough. It depends on the other candidates, right? If no one solved it, then of course they're just perhaps going to look at the person who managed to get the closest or managed to explain their code, present it in a logical way, used let and const rather than using var, used modern syntax, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, they can assess all these things, but as long as you talk about it and talk about perhaps what went wrong, what you might improve in the future, all those sorts of things are highly, highly important. It's not just about whether you get the question right or wrong. Please don't forget that. Yeah, it's definitely about how you explain it, how you present your ideas. I've said that a lot, but I'll keep saying it. Yeah. So, any questions on those sorts of things? None from you? No? Cool. So, after that, let's assume everything's gone well. Then the next stage would hopefully be you get invited there for either a one-on-one interview or a group interview. And again, it depends on the company, right? But these can range from half a day, whole day sort of things to just your sort of 30-minute to an hour normal standard interview. That again will usually be broken up into two parts, at least two parts. The technical side of things is either going to be a board challenge. I'd say in at least 20% of the cases you're going to get a board challenge. If you don't get a board challenge, you will get a similar logical test, and that might be on a pre-configured computer. So you have to sit down and use someone else's laptop to solve a logical test. It might not be in JavaScript, it might not be in a language that you're familiar with, it might just be general syntax, so a logic problem as opposed to a specific Sudoku, maybe. Oh, pseudocode. I thought you said Sudoku, right? It could be. Yeah, they could get you to just write in pseudocode, or more likely than not, it will just be set up as a logical problem, right? You joke, but like it could actually happen. They could give you some sort of puzzle thing like that. Yes. Puzzles, riddled. It depends on the company and depends what they value most in developers. If they value your problem-solving ability and your logical thinking, then they very well might test you on something like that. You know, you even get ones at junior levels where they use something like, oh Christ, what's the who did CS50 and what was the first unit 0 on that? What's Scratch? Yeah, it might even literally be in something similar to Scratch, you know, where you've got buttons and you can literally drag and drop stuff. Yeah, so that doesn't necessarily test whether you can code in JavaScript, but it does test your logical thinking and solving puzzles, maybe to navigate someone through a maze or something like that. Yeah. You did Pong, yeah. So I don't think they'd get you to create Pong in your interview, but who knows? Who knows? A gaming company, perhaps. Yeah. So you're going to get some sort of logical or coding technical tests when you're there. Yeah. And then again, they'll probably be looking over your shoulder while you're doing that and just assessing you in many things. And then you'll probably again get the opportunity to talk about that logical test or that coding challenge. So that's your opportunity to say what went wrong or say what you'd improve if given more time or stuff like that. And yeah, that will usually be done as part of the face-to-face interview at the end, and that's when they just get to know a bit more about you and your motivation, you know, why you want the job, all those sorts of questions, which I'm not going to go through now, but if people are interested, we can do like a quick-fire personal questions thing. We probably won't record it all, yeah, but we can do that if people want practice at those sort of softer skills questions that interviewers tend to throw out. You know, what are your strengths and weaknesses? You know, everyone always loves that one. You know, what am I going to say? How can I make my weakness look like a strength and all that sort of stuff? But yeah, if it's something you're interested in, we can try and do that informally, but let me know, yeah? So, yeah, the only other really thing I wanted to show you was just to brush up on your knowledge and just, as well as using the Kadiri platform, how can we use other little tools that just assess where we're at? I know you quite like using stuff just on the phone, just quick little, you mentioned for something else, I think, that you, some sort of app, but I can't remember now. Solo Learn, yeah.
You mentioned one, so I haven't seen that.
Yeah, so I was just going to show you
I've seen it.
one other here, and I'm going to test out whether I can stream my phone easily to my laptop and then onto YouTube. So this is an experiment, guys, so bear with me. So I should be streaming my mobile phone device here.
So with Solo Learn, you can complete the certification and it then links to your LinkedIn account so people can see you actually.
Yeah, so that's quite a nice thing, right? A lot of online learning platforms now, they let you sort of show a badge or show your learning on LinkedIn. So there's definitely no harm in doing that, especially if it goes back some time. They can see that you've been invested in learning coding for more than 2 weeks, and then you suddenly want a coding job and please hire me. They can see that it's been a long-term goal and ambition of yours and that you're committed to it. That's always a good thing to show. If you haven't got that, please don't worry. I mean, you'll build that up over time, and that's why we're here and we're building projects on CodeFlix, yeah? But yeah, I quite like this one just for quick-fire questions. I can share you a link to this. I forget exactly what it's called. I think it's just called JavaScript Quiz. This is on Android, but I'm sure it's available on Apple as well. And essentially, you've just got lots of little quick-fire questions. So can you read that just about? I can't really zoom any more, unfortunately. No. But, oh, I touched one accidentally and somehow I got the right answer. But there was a 25% chance of that.
Yeah, you practiced before.
Muscle memory. But, yeah. Lots of them like this, yeah. You will get given a function, and these are really common in when you used to do C as well. They used to just give you all these symbols and say, what does this C function return? And you think, oh, blimey. But with JavaScript, it's a bit easier. So hopefully you can see there we've got a function expression, right? And it's returning 2009, that function. But then you've got const result equals 262 and the result of calling the function. So this is sort of similar to what the board challenge is doing this week, yeah? The logical operators, that and symbol in there. So that last line, const result equals 262 and function. So how does the and operator work? What does it return? Not in this case, just in general, what does it return?
Returns true when both the conditions are met.
Returns true, but true would be a wrong answer to that question. It doesn't return true or false. Definitely not. That's a common misconception.
It tries to return the first falsy value you can find and operator from left to right, and if it can't, then it returns the last truthy value.
Textbook. Did everyone get that? So literally a textbook definition there. So it returns it tries to return, as Richard said, the first falsy value from left to right. Yeah. So it will return the first falsy value. So if const result was 0 and the result of calling the function, it would just return 0 because it's a falsy value that it's come across. So it just returns that falsy value. Not necessarily false. If it was false, it would return that. But any falsy value, undefined, null, not a number, empty string, that's what it will return if it encounters a falsy value. Otherwise, it will return the last truthy value. Yeah, from left to right, the last truthy value. So in this case, we've got 262. Is that truthy or falsy? Would it be coerced to true or false if we put a not operator on? True, yeah. So it's a truthy value. And the last one is 2009, which is also truthy. So the and operator in that case returns the last truthy value. Yeah, which is 2009, which I accidentally clicked on and got wrong. Yeah. So these are just the beginner ones. They do get harder, but I think they're just nice little refreshers if you've learnt this stuff elsewhere, just to recap your knowledge. So there's just 8 questions, I think. There's no timer or anything on this one. Oh, I'm trying to click on my my laptop screen. I've got to click on my phone because I'm just sharing the screen. So again, that is another, right? What is the value of result? So have we used set yet? Have I shown you the set object?
No.
No. But
Values unique.
yeah, so think of a set as being very similar to an array. It's still a collection, and it still has a list of items, or a list of values in it.
It's beginners.
This is beginner, yeah.
Okay.
So the questions themselves aren't too hard, but it's quite a wide
I'm just saying that.
knowledge base that it draws from, yeah? So, yeah, sets, like arrays, but, as Richard said, we can't have repeated values in there.
Is it for?
Hey? Is it 4? Right, okay, so we've currently got a set with 3 items in it. Those values are 1, 2, and 3. This next line says value add 1. So we're trying to add 1 into the set. If that was an array, that's fine. We'd have 1, 2, 3, 1, right? If we use push. Add is a method for a set. It's meant to add a value into that set. So because sets only store unique values, do you think it will let us add a 1 inside of that? No. It won't be undefined, because we then want to ask what is the result. What is value.size? So .size is very similar to .length, but it's a property of a set. So in other words, how many elements are in the set? So you initially said 4, not knowing what a set did, which is a good guess, but unfortunately set doesn't let us add that 1 inside a set. So therefore value.size is still going to be 3, exactly. So if we click 3 on my phone, then we get the correct answer. Yeah? Yeah. Operators like this.
There's 2 tildes.
2 tildes, which I don't even use. What's the tilde again? Fine.
Sort of bitwise.
It is a bitwise operator, but what exactly does it do?
Beginner, right? Exactly. This is not
It's a not operator.
It's a not operator.
Is
Is it? Bitwise. Oh, bitwise
This
not.
is not incrementing and decrementing.
What? It should be. So we.
It's decrementing, isn't it?
Stumped on beginner.
So, Richard, what did you say?
They're not very common in the language anymore, but
Tilde is a not operator that flips all the bits in the upper round.
Is it not decrementing when you've got 2?
No, I think the 2 tildes should just flip them back and forth.
so is it going to be?
As in from minus 12, going
So
back
is-
to plus to 12 and then back to minus. Or
Yeah.
positive to minus and then back to positive in this case.
So we're going either 12 or minus 12. So you're saying negative 12. Is that your answer?
Can we see the question again?
Yeah.
So I think from what I got from Richard, it was saying that since it's positive 12, the first one would make it minus 12.34 and then back to positive 12.34. Is that correct?
Yeah.
No, it's 12. Yeah. Gets rid of the decimals.
It changes it to an integer.
Yeah.
It's a can be used on strings to convert to integers as well.
Yeah. So a way of converting to integers, essentially, other than using 2 fixed. I guess you would see that more in legacy code, because they're very fast operations, the bitwise operators, but they're not very readable. They're not very clear. Yeah, so they're not used that much anymore. We've got the 2 fixed method instead, right, which we could use in that case.
I think
Yeah.
if you ever use a bitwise operator, they treat the values as 32-bit integers. So if it's a string or anything, just assume it'll get turned into an integer.
Yeah. Cool. But anyway, hopefully this has just given you a taster of. There's one you can definitely do, right? Why are we doing with all that mumbo jumbo, Vince? Just use split. This is a split one. Const result 1_2_3 dot split underscore. What are we going to get? Are we going to get an array of 1, 2, 3 as numbers? Are we going to get an array of 1, 2, 3 as strings? Or are we just going to get 1, 2, and 3 all concatenated together? Concatenated? Middle one? Do we agree? So what does split do? Split takes a string, turns it into an array. But what did we have to begin with? We had a string, right? Not numbers. So does array into strings? Yeah, it should be. Oh, yeah, wrong one again. Nice one. So everyone got that one right? Yeah. Anyway, you can play around with it in your own time, yeah? Are you happy to leave it there? Any general questions on sort of techie aspects of interviews? How do I best practice for them? Can you take notebooks? I doubt it.
I don't think so.
I very much doubt it.
Is that a silly question?
No, it's no question, silly question. But
Well, it's known as Annie's approach.
I mean, if to be honest, like if you've done a tech test, which we'll talk about tomorrow, we'll do one tomorrow, then usually they would have expected you to reflect on that in some way. They would have probably told you that. So in other words, did you manage to finish it? You know, what did you find the hardest part? How else could you have written certain aspects of it? What other tools could you have used? All that sort of stuff. So if you've reflected on it and you've written something out, either as notes or a written document, I don't see any harm in initially just spurting everything out from your head, but then saying, oh, I did write down some other things, is it okay if I just refer to my notebook? I think that's acceptable. I wouldn't mind that personally if I was an interviewer. It shows that you've treated the task seriously and you've gone through and reflected on it. Yeah, but in general, like if you know what questions are going to come up and then you've got some answers in there, of course no. But if it was just to aid your discussion around the topic via a tech test or something like that, then yeah, I'd be happy with that. But you'd have to check these things probably beforehand. Yeah, don't just pull out a notebook and start reading from it. Just get the okay first. Yeah. Disagree, Vince? Or?
No, I'm just thinking.
Yeah.
How do you usually do? Yeah, it is.
Anything else, guys?
Well,
Cool. All right. Well, I'll share the link to a few of those things, and you can check them out in your own time.